Hello to you all, and welcome to the Pitcast by us here at the Pit Crew Online, from the fans for the fans. It is debrief number 3. The Hungarian Grand Prix was last weekend, following on 2 consecutive races at the Red Bull Ring, with 2 vastly different race outcomes. And today I am proudly joined. I'm struggling. I am proudly joined by 2 of my pit crew colleagues. First up, we have Aaron.
Hi guys, nice to be back on the podcast.
This is your first debrief, I understand.
Yeah, first debrief.
Yep. And next up, some congratulations are in order, because Rob here has become the deputy F1 editor. Congratulations, Rob.
Thank you. Yeah, I've been here a couple of years, so it's good to have the opportunity. So yeah, thank you to Simon for promoting me, and I look forward to doing the best I can with it.
All right. So, Hungarian Grand Prix. I've made some points here, and first thing I want us to... I should probably have said my name is Luca, but you lot probably might have already known that. Yeah, I don't matter here. It's mainly YouTube. Right. Now I'll get on with it. I'm professional. Right. Racing Point, with all these rumours that apparently Sebastian Vettel might be moving over to Racing Point, which is going to become Aston Martin next year. And it's very much expected that Lance Stroll is going to be his teammate, which means Sergio Perez is out the door. First, Rob, I want your opinions on this potential driver shock, or maybe not even a shock, because Lawrence Stroll's not going to get fire his son, is he? No matter how bad he is.
I can't see him doing that. No. There's nothing. Getting a 4-time world champion into the team is never a bad thing. So you wouldn't begrudge Racing Point or Aston Martin that kind of decision or that opportunity to have him on board. And I think Sebastian, he gets a lot of stick for his performances these days, but he's still showing even now that he is quick and as I say, he's won 4 championships. That doesn't just happen for no reason. So I think it would be a great move for them to have somebody like him in their team. Whilst I'd be very happy for Sebastian, obviously leaving Ferrari at the end of the season, and we hope he stays in Formula One, somebody eventually always has to lose out. When kind of drivers swap around and new drivers come in, somebody gets forced out of the sport. It happened with Nico Hülkenberg last year, and I thought that was undeserved, but these things happen. As opposed to which one it would be, obviously ordinarily, if it wasn't Lawrence Stroll managing that team, well, first of all, Esteban Ocon probably would have stayed for 2019, but he's not going to fire his son. Obviously he's given him his seat in Formula One, and agree with it or not, that kind of gives Lance that security. And in fairness, Lance Stroll actually did a fantastic job in Hungary. I think on his day, he can be a very good racing driver. But for Sergio Perez, he's had podiums in Formula One. He's a very, very consistent driver who'll consistently score points. He these days rarely, makes a mistake. So I think it would be very harsh on him. You could say it's the nature of the beast, but you can also say that, is it fair that Lance Stroll gets to stay in the sport because of his dad? Maybe not. But I think with this whole rumour that's going on, as I say, someone's always going to have to, see the door. And it's not always an easy decision to take. But sadly, it's one that's going to be made one way or the other. But I certainly can't see Lance Stroll being dropped by his dad.
Yeah, something I've always... when Lance Stroll came to F1, I looked at his results in the lower formula, and he seemed to be quite impressive. Then there was all these rumours about how his dad paid off all of his teammates in the lower championships to not race him, and he always got put with the best teams, which, considering, I remember in Lance Stroll's European F3 championship winning season in 2016, Nick Cassidy, who famously never had the budget to race in Europe, was somehow capable of racing in Europe that year. I wonder how. But anyway, enough of that. Lance Stroll has obviously proven that he is a competent driver. But Aaron, I think we could all agree that if Racing Point, the pink Mercedes, soon to be Aston Martin, which will probably be a green Mercedes, ends up potentially helping Lance Stroll win a championship, nobody really wants to see a championship being engineered in such a way that someone could actually like no one wants to see a championship won in a way that it's essentially just bought for them. Wouldn't you agree?
Well, I mean, Lance Stroll, yeah, he's got the pay driver tag. I mean, he does get that name. But like you say, his junior categories, his record is impressive. And like he came this weekend, he nearly got on the podium, and he has a podium to his name from Baku a couple of years ago. I mean, there's a lot of legality about Racing Point and Mercedes. Whether they did copy, it looks like it on paper, from a glance. But I don't know. I think every championship's bought to an extent. Whoever puts the most budget in, whoever puts the most into their car, which is Mercedes at the minute, seem to be reap the rewards of it. And F1's always been the same. Whoever spends the money, you got to spend the money to win big. I don't know. I think Racing Point, can they challenge for titles yet? I mean, there's Mercedes and Red Bull and I was going to say Ferrari to overcome, but I think they can get up there, and obviously Aston Martin coming in next season, that will, I think, push them up a level. But someone has to dethrone Mercedes at some point, don't they?
Hopefully by 2022 we'll have a bit more of a balanced act, because right now Mercedes are unstoppable. I'm going to just keep you here, Aaron. I do want to ask though, Aston Martin coming into F1, obviously Lawrence Stroll bought a share in, or stake, or whatever the terminology is, in Aston Martin. But Aston Martin were, at that point, looking to compete in the World Endurance Championship. And now they've withdrawn their efforts, at the very least, for like a year or so. But now, if they're going to come to F1, they really have to really justify it. And I think getting a name like Vettel, or even what I'm hearing now, Max Verstappen might even be interested, because if he were to go into that team, he could be in like prime position to take over Lewis Hamilton's Mercedes seat once he calls it a day. So is it like essential now, potentially, that Aston Martin next year will really want a big name and Perez will be shown the door?
Yeah, I think you got to make a statement of intent. You need your marquee signing. When Toyota came in early 2000s, I don't think they really did that. They had, Alan McNish and Mika Salo, who, no disrespect to them, they're both fantastic drivers, but they're not that name pull, that wow, they're going for it this year. If Aston Martin got Vettel or Verstappen, two very big names, I'd feel sorry for Perez, because I think that Perez is probably the best driver to, outside of the top three teams. I think, he's been consistent, he's quick, always up and around there. But like you say, someone has to be shown the door, and Lance Stroll isn't going to be it, is he, if his dad owns the team? So I think getting Vettel in there, whether he gets out of this little slump he's in or not, his expertise and his know-how, and the fact he's a four-time world champion, sort of speaks for itself, really.
Rob, I'm going to throw it over to you, and I would also like to know, who would you expect Perez to potentially race for if he was to be shown the door at Racing Point?
Oh, that's a good question. I think teams like Alfa Romeo, I don't think they've fully decided yet on their lineup. Haas as well. Grosjean and Magnussen, are they going to stay at Haas for next season? Who really knows? The problem is, at this stage of his career, I think it's got to the point now where the likes of Mercedes and Ferrari aren't going to be looking at Sergio Perez. They'll be looking at younger talent like George Russell. Obviously, Carlos Sainz is going to Ferrari for next year. Red Bull. Obviously, they're going to be looking at the young driver pool. Will Pierre Gasly go up for next year? Again, I don't really see Perez being given a seat there. It would be nice if he does get a seat at a top team, and that could still happen. It's not outside the realms of possibility. But it's kind of another midfield team, really, that you would expect Perez to go to. And I think, obviously, he would have been looking for more than that. But after he left McLaren, it kind of became evident over the following couple of years, 14 and 15, that despite the podiums, a move to a really top team wasn't going to happen for him. And now that it looks like Racing Point going into Aston Martin are going to go into this period of being a competitive team, Perez is being shown the door again, as he was in his McLaren days. So it's a real shame for him, because just as we thought that he was finally going to get that opportunity at a big team, it now looks like it's going to be all over with Sebastian Vettel joining, and he's just one of the most consistently performing drivers on the grid. So that's a shame. But yeah, realistically, you're looking at teams like Haas and Alfa Romeo, possibly Williams if George Russell gets moved on from Williams to a bigger challenge like Mercedes. And but sadly, I wouldn't really see Perez, driving in any other team than another field competitor, like, as I say, like Renault or like Haas or Alpha. It'd be interesting to see, though, I don't know what you guys think about it, if you would look at a move elsewhere, other than Formula One, because I think obviously there will be drives out there.
I do remember at the end of last year, Perez said that he would potentially look outside of F1 if he continued to only ever be in midfield cars. And the second he gets a car which is supposedly capable of running up the front, he's now potentially going to be ousted in favour of a 4-time champ and a daddy's boy. Sorry, I had to get one of those in. All right, well, let's move on then to the actual race itself. So at the start of the race, we had a few drivers coming in because it was like a wet to dry start. And there was almost a masterclass performed, because I think it was Daniel Kvyat and 2 Haases. They came into the pits and at the start of the race, and Kvyat came back in and put on the dry tyres, the wet tyres again. And the Haases stayed out. And it was, I remember it was last year in Hockenheim, near the end of the race, when Lance Stroll put on the dries, had a full lap at racing speed on a drying track to warm up the tyres before the safety car came in for all the people on the cold inters, and I think some were on wets as well. And Stroll just catapulted through the field, and then when everyone came in, he was leading the race, and he eventually finished 4th. And we're not that used to seeing these strategic masterclasses in wet to dry conditions ever since Jenson Button left the sport, because he always did that. His first win in Hungary, the 2011 Hungarian Grand Prix, Canada, all that. So it was very refreshing. Like, I remember before the race, F1 posted who's going to get their second podium first, and one of the people on there was Magnussen, and another one was Stroll, Norris, Sainz, Gasly. And I said, well, Stroll seems the most likely now, because he's, third on the grid? Yeah, and then Magnussen was at the front, like in 3rd place. And I thought, is this actually going to happen? It didn't in the end, and then they got a penalty. But sorry, I'm waffling on. Rob, talk a little bit about the rock star look that Haas got, to quote Gunther Steiner at the start of the 2018 series of Drive to Survive.
Yeah, they look like the big boys again. Challenging with kind of the 3rd best team, and remember they were running 4th and 5th in Australia before the pit stop dramas. Sadly, back then that pace was on merit. Not so much now, but it was a bold decision from Haas, and I can't remember if Kvyat did pit or if he stayed out. I'm trying to remember.
He pitted.
I pitted, yeah. So, it was a great decision. That's the thing about wet races, especially wet races that transition into dry races, is that you just never know who's going to pull the rabbit out of the hat and just take that gamble, really. Obviously, the Haas cars were already starting towards the back, so a pit lane start didn't really affect them too much. And they guessed right. I guess you could say, surprised that nobody else really made that decision, but you never really know until you kind of see the guinea pigs come in and all of a sudden they've got pace. It was great to see. Obviously, they ended up falling back down the field, but they were smart. They didn't kind of get involved in any battles that they didn't need to, and in the end, that took Kevin to 1 point in the end after the penalty. So it was a really, really good move. That's why we love these wet races. That's why we love changeable conditions in Formula One, because it can give you these really surprise results. As you said, Lance Stroll last year in Hockenheim made that another really bold decision to pit onto the slicks, and it worked. I remember you mentioned Jenson Button. I remember Melbourne 2010 as well, when it looks way too wet for the slicks, but he pitted onto the slicks, ran wide in turn 3, so everybody thought, no, it's too wet. And lo and behold, it dries up, and Jenson ends up taking the lead after, I think it was Vettel's brake failure in that race. So it was really good to see it. unfortunately, it didn't pan out, as a podium for either Kevin or Roman. But it was a great strategic move and something that we love to see when we get these wet races.
Aaron, I'm going to have to ask you a bit about Bottas's start now. So last year in Suzuka, Vettel was started on pole position. He creaked away slightly, but held it in the position, and if anything, he didn't really benefit at all from that, moving forward slightly. Same here with Bottas, but people obviously are a bit more vocal because how dare they not punish a Mercedes? There's mafia all over again, and blah, blah, blah. But yeah, Bottas's start, he seemed to move forward slightly, stopped, and then he was just like miles behind the field, ended up finishing third behind Verstappen and the dominant Hamilton. Talk us through the, why he wasn't penalised, and in the end, it was justified, wasn't it?
Yeah, I mean, I think the way penalties usually should work is if you've gained an advantage from it, you should be brought back down or pegged back, Bottas did, he sort of jumped, then stopped, then went off again. So he hadn't really gained anything. If anything, it looks like he's bogged down and got away slower. So he hadn't really gained anything from, and a penalty would just be exacerbating it. He's already got an issue. He's already lost time off the bog start. If he jumped the start and was ahead of Hamilton by turn 2, then yeah, pull him back down. But I don't see the point of penalising him further if he's already not gained any advantage from it.
Yeah, and I can imagine. I remember back in the last Grand Prix at Styria, Leclerc and Vettel, when they collided, the FIA announced no further action on that because in the end, they're both their races are ruined anyway. What good would a penalty really do at that point?
Yeah, exactly. They're both out, so no penalty they've been pointless.
All right. Speaking of teams who have experienced the bottomless pit of F1 luck and competitiveness, Williams, they have had the thick of it over the last few years. We've obviously seen them be revitalised at the beginning of the hybrid era, 2014. Massa got pole in Austria that year. Bottas could have potentially won Silverstone. And every year since then, they were third in both 2014 and 15. Then they were like fourth in 16, and it's since been a downhill slope until last year when they really couldn't have gotten any lower. The single point, qualifying 19th and 20th the whole time. This year, their qualifying seems, their pace might be masked somewhat by the changeable conditions in qualifying for the Styrian and Hungarian Grand Prix, but George Russell really has been outperforming that car. And Nicholas Latifi, he's probably not the highest rated of all the drivers at all, but he has at least been proven to have been somewhat competent in the races that he has had. So, Rob, I'm going to throw this to you. Williams are performing a bit of a fight back, even if their race pace isn't great so far. They've at least got some bit of qualifying promise.
I think if you look at Williams' performance over the last 10, 15 years and you drew a graph of their performance, it would be the most undulating line you've ever seen. It's been crazy how much they've ebbed and flowed. And I think it's testament to Claire Williams and Sir Frank Williams that they've been able to kind of keep that team going and keep their heads up, when it's got hard, especially as it did last year. The Williams is still one of the slowest cars on the grid, but they really are starting to catch up to that midfield pack now and kind of get amongst the middle teams. Obviously, they're not quite there yet. But George got P12, I think it was in Styria, P12 as well in Hungarian qualifying. It was a shame that it kind of went wrong in the first few laps in Austria when he Styria when he ran wide. But yeah, the Williams seems to be more competitive. They've got two drivers. Obviously, Latifi pace-wise isn't quite on George's level at the moment. Obviously, it's his rookie season. You can only really expect so much, especially alongside an immense talent like George Russell. But they're both very driven. They're both competitive. They're both really, really pushing that car. Williams have excuse me. Williams have really, I think, made gains, but obviously we know that they can still do a lot more to kind of get off the bottom, because they're still there or thereabouts really. But yeah, I think it's improving a lot. You can see over the first 3 rounds, they're not kind of just the back markers who you know are going to finish 19th and 20th in every race. They're making a fist of it, and hopefully that will improve as the season goes on with development of the car, and hopefully obviously it improves into next season as well. But yeah, it's I think the fact that they're more competitive is definitely highlighting as well just how exciting George Russell is, with his pace and his talent, his racing ability. So yeah, let's hope that this upwards curve now can continue for a while, and obviously get a lot bigger.
Williams recently put themselves up for sale. There will be when they do eventually sell up, it will be the first time, I think, throughout their entire history that they're not majority owned by the Williams family. And it is a shame, obviously, that we've seen an F1 legend fall so much to the point now that they have had to sell up, or if they don't want to risk going under. Williams is such an iconic team, but in the end, it is something that has to be done in order to survive in this climate nowadays. You know, you want to be able to continue having these guys on the grid, and so if that has to happen, so be it. And I do hope more than anything that we can see Williams just getting back into the points finishes, even if they're not like a leading team. Like just make sure that they're not Hispania levels of horrendous racing team. That was unintentional, I promise. So, Aaron, what have you got to add regarding Williams' upturn in fortune?
Yeah, I mean, it's great to see they are coming back. You know, like you say, they are a legendary team, and it's a bit of a trend at the minute. I mean, McLaren did it a couple of years ago with Honda. They went right down, and they've come back up. So I think Williams can do it. Maybe they have to sell the soul to the devil a little bit and sell a bit of the team off to do so. I think it'd be the right call eventually. You know, George Russell, exciting driver. Latifi, he looks all right. He got into Q2 on Saturday, which is great to see both Williams out of Q1. I think it's been a couple of years since that happened. Yeah, I mean, I'm a big fan of Williams personally, so I'm really excited to see that they are starting to make strides towards the top again. And I feel like Claire Williams has come under a lot of flack for it. You know, people blame her for the issues that they've had, which I think is frankly a bit ridiculous. She's good. I mean, her dad's got knowledge, and she's been watching him for years. So I feel like she's definitely the right person for the job, and I think they can get back up there soon, hopefully.
I want to bring up a point. Nicholas Latifi, so it's no secret, obviously, that he's a paid driver. In fact, if we look at his junior Formula career, I feel like I've brought this up before. His only year when he had any sort of success was F2 last year, finishing runner-up to Nick de Vries in his 5th season. And as we know, typical company that you expect in like doing well in F2, GP2 after that many years include the likes of Maldonado and Palmer. Not great company. But like with Stroll and so many other drivers that have gone before, these teams really are in the thick of it. And they need it's a necessary evil almost, isn't it? Like, even if a driver doesn't deserve to be there on merit, if that has to happen to ensure the survival of these teams and the people who work for them keep getting jobs to pay their mortgages and their bills, so be it. In fact, I do remember also hearing that Dmitry Mazepin, whose son Nikita races in Formula 2 for High Tech, he is looking to potentially buy into the team, which means if Russell ever moves on, we could have a lineup of Latifi and Mazepin. Rob, you think that it is unfortunate that Williams has to be like that, but so be it?
At the moment, yeah, because it's a bit of a vicious cycle really in Formula One. Because if you're not performing, you don't get prize money. But if you don't have money, you can't perform. Formula One is a sport where you need lots and lots of money to perform well, and obviously when it starts going wrong, the team starts losing money. And Formula One is an absolutely huge commitment. You need to, in some respects, if you're not a Mercedes or a Ferrari, you've really got to put all your eggs in one basket in a way, and just hope that it pays off, because it's such a huge investment that you almost can't invest in anything else other than Formula One. So if you're going to do it, you better make sure it works. And obviously the Williams family is doing their best right now to make sure that it does work. I think to touch on what Aaron said earlier about Claire Williams, I completely agree. Paddy Lowe came into the team in 2018, and when it started going wrong, you saw Claire Williams taking a lot of responsibility. Paddy Lowe never ever seemed to want to do that. And as much as I respect him for everything he did at McLaren and at Mercedes, I think when things get tough like that, and one of the leaders in the team disappears, it's a bit of a damning indictment really on him, really, to be honest. So I think it just shows how much of a leader Claire Williams is, that she took responsibility for it. But in F1, you've got to make those tough decisions and you have to own them. And I think Claire Williams is at the moment doing what she thinks is best for the team. And yeah, it probably is for the best. You saw Sauber or Alfa Romeo, really struggling. There's a reason they kept Marcus Ericsson on for so long. And actually, in the end, to be fair, he ended up performing quite well in 2018. But they had to keep him on as a pay driver, because they just didn't have the money until they got the Alfa Romeo investment. So
Kimi Räikkönen getting in there as well, because obviously investors are going to go after a champion, right?
Exactly, yeah. So that was an important move, and I think obviously Williams could do with someone like that, but not whilst they're at the bottom. So they need money from somewhere, and whilst it is a shame that they're having to sell, it's a changing world, and it's a tough world in which if you want to kind of survive, then sometimes you've got to take these decisions, as much as they'll hate to do it. I think gone are the days of Damon Hill, Nigel Mansell winning championships for Williams. Sadly, it's kind of a new time, a new era, and these decisions have to be made. It's sad to see it, as you say, because a team like Williams, you would have thought, should never ever be in that position. But it is what it is. They are in that position now, and they have to do something about it. And as I say, I think it's a sign of Claire Williams' leadership skills, that instead of trying to keep hold of that team all for herself, she's doing what's right for her employees, for the team itself, for the Williams name, and I think you have to credit her for that.
I certainly do, and I do appreciate it when team leaders really do go out of their way to take accountability, even if it isn't always them. And plus, also, we always see these attitudes. Like Claire Williams is currently the only woman in the F1 world to run a team, and it just so happens to be the worst one. And it's always like over the weekend, I think Catherine Legg broke her leg. Oh, I just realised what I said there. Catherine Legg broke her. Ignore that. But she broke her leg in a crash at Paul Ricard, and plenty of us saw that tweet. I think was it Jack who sent it, about someone being like, "Oh, it was obviously a woman can't drive a car like that." I shouldn't swear. We have all these. I mean, we had Manisha Kaltenborn running Sauber for a few years, and I seem to remember there was another woman who ran a team for a while. I can't seem to remember. Do jump in. You've got plenty. I in the end, Claire Williams is doing what she can, and I tip my hat off to her, because you could be Cyril Abiteboul, and that's much worse. Anyway, moving on. Red Bull mechanics. That was an incredible effort by them to get Max Verstappen, who had broken part of his front left suspension on the sighting lap when going to the grid. That was unbelievable. They did it on the grid with 25 seconds left to go. They fixed it, and Max Verstappen rewarded them for their efforts, finishing second. Aaron, that was unbelievable, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was fantastic. I mean, to get a car turned around that quick. I mean, gone are the days where, I think it was 2005, Schumacher crashed into Christian Albers on the way to the grid in China, and they just hopped into the spare cars, because you had spare cars, then you had that luxury. Nowadays you don't. So to get that fixed that quick, incredible. You see it in other sports. I mean, once in one of the rallies, Peter Solberg crashed, and a day later they had the car fixed. It was a write-off, but they had it fixed a day later, and he won the rally. So it justified the decision to fix the car. But yeah, it's just, I mean, a driver like Verstappen binning it on the way to the grid is pretty. It was, when I saw it, I was like, whoa, what did that actually happen? But to get that turned around that quick, and then to still be quick enough to finish second and beat a Mercedes, it's a fantastic effort from everyone at Red Bull, and Verstappen himself to drive it to get to second place after such a psychological sort of ding, I guess. You've put it in the wall once, you're thinking, oh no, am I going to do this again? Would they ever been treacherous at best as it was? So, well done to Verstappen, to Red Bull for getting the job done, and recovering from such a weird situation.
And during the race, Hamilton, he had been told over the radio that Verstappen probably wouldn't make the start, or wasn't make the start. And then during the race, he gets told, oh yeah, Verstappen is 9.6 behind. And he's like, what? I thought Verstappen was out. And he was like, no, got the car fixed. And I saw it on F1's Instagram. Apparently, a lot of people are like, oh, you look at that, he's scared of Verstappen. It's just like, no, he's just in marvel of how Red Bull were able to turn that around so quickly. I don't think that was him being all scared. But yeah, Rob, we just have to, again, we have to remark about the incredible effort that these guys go through, because they're very much unsung heroes, aren't they?
They are. I think the drivers get all the praise. I'm going to just praise Verstappen slightly, because I think a lot of drivers, having done that, would have hopped out the car and just left it. But, he drove it out the wall and managed to get it back to the grid. So, well done.
Risking further damage as well.
Exactly, yeah. And probably risking taking someone else out or something like that. But anyway, no, the effort of the team, to get that fix, that quickly. Mark Webber tweeted after the race about the amount of experience and the cool heads and the quick hands that they've got in that team. And was it 25 minutes that they had to?
I don't know exactly, but I think it was.
Yeah. It wasn't long. That's for sure. To get that suspension changed, it's crazy how they managed it. And it's incredible, just the amount of talent that Formula One mechanics have, and it does go unnoticed quite a lot. But take a car like that to your local dealer, and it will take a while to get that fixed. So the fact that they managed to do that in that space of time is absolutely, there's no word for it. There's no word for just how amazing that is, and it was just a phenomenal effort. They had no right to fix that car, and somehow they managed it. It was like a miracle. But and a remarkable effort from them. Fantastic work, and in the end, they those mechanics fully deserve the podium that Max got, because to get that car fixed like that was a tremendous effort.
Speaking of Red Bull, I feel like us in Formula One these days are so impulsive with forming an opinion that can easily be turned around very quickly. Austria, when Lewis clattered into Albon, oh, he's a dangerous driver. He really should change his approach. Following race, he dominates. Vettel spins in Austria. We've kind of grown tired of him spin-allering. But then the following week, it was Leclerc who had the incredible result in the first race to get that dog of a car to second, and then immediately we start saying, "Oh, he's reckless. This, that, and other." The reason I'm bringing this up, Albon, he had a torrid qualifying, and so many of us, not me, I don't know about you guys, but so many of the F1 community decided to just take a massive dump on him from a great height. George Russell came to his defence immediately, who out-qualified him in the Williams. The Williams out-qualified a Red Bull, who would have put money on that. Albon then really put his doubters to rest when he drove an immaculate race to fifth. And so, Rob, I just want to know not only how we feel about Albon's recovery drive, but also how we in F1 just seem to form opinions so quickly that can be made invalid the following week.
Yeah, I think Albon's a very talented driver. I think he definitely saw sparks of brilliance last year when he took over from Pierre Gasly, and I think what you have to remember is that he's alongside Max Verstappen. One of the most talented, talented drivers, young drivers we've seen in a very long time in Formula One. He's a generational talent, and someone who is undoubtedly going to be a world champion one day. He's immensely quick. So I think what a lot of people do is compare him to Max Verstappen, and you can't always do that. But I think there was a suggestion that the car is very geared, to Max Verstappen's liking. Having said that, should Albon's car still have been quick enough to go to Q3? Probably, yeah. But every driver has a bad day. Albon has proven to be, a very consistent driver who will get those results for Red Bull, particularly when the top teams trip over. So I think it's harsh, the criticism that he's had, especially because as I say, he's alongside Max. It's going to be tough, but I still think he's doing a very good job in that car. And after Q2, obviously, George Russell was very gallant in his defence of Albon, and he's absolutely right. He is a talented driver who's won in a lot of junior formulas or Formulae, and Red Bull, one way or another, are being kind of accused of not doing enough for Albon. Which one is true? I don't really know. But after a bad day on the Saturday, Albon really pulled it back on the Sunday, made some really, really good moves on the way back up the field. Obviously, he passed Sebastian Vettel at the end as well in that Ferrari. So there could be no complaints really about that drive. Obviously, it was a shame what happened in Q2 on Saturday, but there's no doubting that he's a very, very solid racing driver and doesn't deserve the criticism that he's getting. But at the same time, that does kind of come with being Verstappen's teammate. As for Formula One fans, I think every sport is pretty fickle, but Formula One, especially with how prominent social media is now, opinions change like the wind. Which I think is harsh. I think sometimes if you just kind of step away from social media for a few weeks, then you'll actually start looking at it from a much kind of clearer perspective and just see that actually a lot of these drivers are doing a great job, and yeah, they don't deserve the kind of online hate that they get sometimes. Just got to remember that drivers sometimes will make mistakes. They're trying to control a car at 200 miles an hour. It's not easy to do that. So they're all talented drivers. Sometimes you look at the criticism they get and you just think, it's kind of sheep on social media, kind of just buying into everything else they see. And I think if you just take a step away from that, you'll find 20 drivers who deserve to be there, and they're all quick enough to be there. And they'll all have off days, but they'll all have really good days as well.
That's very well put, Rob. That point you made about the car being tailored to more of Verstappen's liking, when Verstappen was paired up with Gasly at the beginning of last year, Gasly's driving style was really almost polar opposite. It was like Hamilton Button or Senna Prost, in that Verstappen was always, very aggressive and pointy with his car, whereas Gasly's a bit more fluid, a bit more like the conventional style. And so that obviously requires a very different approach. If you see in years gone by, plenty of drivers who have very different styles. Kimi Räikkönen had a style very similar to Michael Schumacher, which was probably why he got on so well with the F2007, because it had been developed by Michael Schumacher. Fernando Alonso has a very unique style, which requires a lot of understeer. It's always going to be very difficult to measure up to drivers who are very different. But Albon, thankfully, he is very similar, and which is why I think he got on a lot better with the car than what Gasly did, and why Gasly, I think, did much better at Toro Rosso. But I'm just going to take the point that Rob was making there about F1 fans being like fickle and sheep like. Do you think that there really is a danger of opinions being, well, like Rob said, opinions can change like the wind. The opinions are also like where wind comes from. Everyone has one, if you get what I'm saying. Yep, good. I'm glad you lot got that. Sorry. I didn't want to say the A word. But Aaron, do you think that perhaps we, as F1 fans, perhaps not necessarily are looking to try and get a negative opinion about a certain driver constantly, and even if they do good, but that we are too impulsive to make a decision in that moment and not know the full picture?
Yeah, I think social media, for all its merits, is a very cynical place most of the time. You know, if one driver has a bad race, they get tons of hate for it for the week up until, like you said, they'll do something good the week after. And then some drivers just constantly get it, like Kvyat's still not shaking off his torpedo stuff. You know, Vettel with his Spinala and all that. Sometimes, yeah, I think people are just jump the gun. I mean, I know the drivers are thick-skinned. They probably read it and shrug it off most of the time. You know, some of the stuff they see, they think, oh, you know, you don't know what you're talking about. But you know, I think sometimes we just need to think before we speak. Essentially, we need to get the full picture. We need to formulate an opinion of a few weeks races. You know, a few races rather than one race, and then jumping on the back straight away, because it's not going to help. It's just going to make things worse. You know, you need to sort of back the driver to do well. I mean, someone like Albon coming into a team like Red Bull, who are very much behind Verstappen, you know, and Albon is a quick driver, he's a good driver. I think is champion material easy. But people aren't going to give him that chance to develop and to show that he's a champion in the making and that he can fight Verstappen if we don't let him, if we just jump on his back all the time. We just need to get behind him and support him, I think.
Yeah, I remember at the beginning of 2019, I kind of really wanted Pierre Gasly to succeed because, you know, when in Formula E, the Techeetah team had Jean-Eric Vergne and Andre Lotterer, the whole Gendre thing, guess what? Max Verstappen, Pierre Gasly resulted in Max Gas. Like, that is just poetry in motion if I'd ever seen like a combination of names. Unfortunately, that hasn't happened, and instead we have Max and Albon. No matter. But yeah, I really do hope that Albon's career isn't ruined by this, because I don't think any driver, even the likes of Verstappen, want to, you know, go out of their way to ruin someone else's career. You know, like. So anyway, let's move on. Right. Now we've come to the point in the debrief where we talk about Lewis Hamilton. Absolutely, utterly dominant. And it is looking highly likely, all but certain, his to lose. He's probably going to wrap up the championship again this year. Even after 3 races, he's shown just how much of a goat he really is. And of course, we're never going to break free of the whole, oh, you just do it because you get the big car, blah, blah, blah. Well, yeah, you know SHIT, you morons. He's not going to do that in a Williams. No offense, Williams. Rob, I talked about this just before we started recording. There's always this hypocrisy when it comes to measuring up Hamilton against the likes of Michael Schumacher. Of course, I'm not here to say Hamilton's better than Schumacher, Schumacher's better than Hamilton, but providing he does equal him and maybe even eclipse him next year, there'll always be little variables in there. But one thing that will never be rid of is the people who are just so unaware of the fact that Michael Schumacher was also dominating in his Ferraris way back when. So I'll throw it over to you. I want to know, how would you compare these two very different people at the height of their careers in the most dominant of cars, and why only one of them seems to get the shtick?
I think a lot of F1 fans, you know, work on novelties quite a lot. So they'll look back at, for example, the V8 era, the V10 era, the V12 era, what have you, and say, oh, that era was better, and you know, Michael was better because he drove better cars in much tougher circumstances. But you know, in 30 years' time, people are going to be looking back at 2014 to 2020 and going, well, that was a tough era, and Lewis has done really well because it's almost like a nostalgia thing in a way that people cling on to. But you know, I've always said it's very, very difficult, almost impossible, really, to compare 2 drivers from 2 different eras of Formula One with different regulations, different spec cars, obviously much different competitors. with how much Formula One has changed, even since Michael Schumacher's last championship in 2004. It's even very different, now compared to how it was just 15, 16 years ago. So I personally think it's nigh on impossible to compare drivers from two different eras. Personally, I've always kind of had a bit of an oxymoron there, because I've always said that Ayrton Senna's the best ever in F1, but you just never really know, because as I say, it's just different times now compared to how it was then. So instead of comparing them, I think it's like the Messi Ronaldo debate. Sometimes it's just a case of just appreciate the kind of magnums that these two are, and how much they've achieved. And Hamilton will definitely go down as one of the greatest of in the history of Formula One, and so will Michael Schumacher. I think you can definitely judge it on numbers, and Lewis is about to win 7. There's no doubt about that. Maybe 8 next year if he stays. We don't even know if he's gonna stay for next year, but he probably will. But I think for sure it's difficult to compare them. I think you just have to appreciate the fact that they are both phenomenal drivers who deserved their championships. They deserved their success, and they were immense talents. And I think it's kind of better to appreciate that than to be at each other's throats about who was better. So yeah, I definitely appreciate how amazing both of them were and are.
And we mentioned this briefly earlier, not knowing the full picture. Everyone seems so incredibly keen to dismiss Hamilton's success, right? Hamilton got to Michael Schumacher's 68 pole position record back in Belgium 2017. And I remember looking on some motorsport forums and people being like, oh, but Hamilton had more races in a season to be able to achieve that, so it's no wonder. And then you actually look at the facts and you find that it turns out Hamilton achieved 68 pole positions in less races. And then when people are confronted with that fact, they're just like, oh, but Hamilton in qualifying for his era didn't have to run race fuel, whereas Schumacher did. He would often run heavier and other cars. Yeah, it was just, you're really plucking at cherries there, aren't you? You just never know the full picture. And Hamilton will never get the credit he deserves, because how dare you try to dethrone Schumacher as the greatest of all time. Hamilton is on 90 pole positions. He's on, was it 85, 86 wins? I can't remember if I checked before or after the race on Sunday.
He's definitely very close to 91 now, that's for sure.
Well, yeah, he might be the first driver in history to eclipse 100 poles, 100 wins. And the only area he doesn't really have is he's second in all time in terms of fastest laps on 47, and Schumacher's on 77. So Schumacher lovers, rest assured, Hamilton's very unlikely to eclipse that one. So you can still pull that up in the game of top trumps. And so, Aaron, again, I have to ask, why do we not give Hamilton the credit he deserves? Everyone seems to think he's handed everything on a plate.
I mean, a bit controversially, I'm not a fan of Hamilton, to be honest. Off the track, on the track, I can't deny his talent. He's the best driver of this generation, easy. I'm same as Rob. I think there is no definitive best driver ever. I think there's best driver of a decade, of a generation, but I don't think you can name one perfect driver. Senna, Fangio, Clark, Schumacher, Hamilton, they're probably the top 5 if you had to rank them. If someone had a gun to your head and said, choose the best 5 drivers ever. But I think he gets the hate for probably how he behaves off the track, maybe. His lavish lifestyle, probably just jealous of that. And then everyone says he's always had the best cars, but he had the foresight in 2012 to move to Mercedes when they were getting up there to the top, but they weren't quite there. And he sort of saw that coming and jumped it, and look at the success he's had since. I don't see why people hate on him so much. I just don't like him because of his attitude sometimes. I think he can be quite petulant, but you can't deny his talent on the track. You can't begrudge him any championships, any wins, any pole positions he's had. He's took them all off pace and off talent alone. And he has had people challenging him. Nico Rosberg took a championship off him in the best car. Vettel pushed him close a lot of seasons, and then he just fell off towards the end. And obviously he's had Alonso, Raikkonen, Jenson Button. Even Jenson Button pushed him. I think it was 2011. Jenson finished second to Vettel, and Hamilton didn't. So you can't say he's not had an easy ride, because I don't think he has. I don't think Schumacher did. I think he had rivals. He had Hakkinen, Alonso towards the end, Raikkonen, Montoya. So I don't see why he's hated so much. It baffles me. I mean, I wouldn't hate him. I won't say I hated him. I just don't like him a bit.
It should be worth noting, obviously, that we don't try to invalidate people who just don't like him, don't support him. You're free not to, of course. Nobody is entitled to accept everything he says, and I, for one, have disagreed with him in the past. I remember he spoke a bit unnecessarily about IndyCar when Alonso went there to do the Indy 500 and rubbed a few IndyCar drivers the wrong way, and rightfully so. They had every right to. And also that point you brought up about people he's faced off against, like the likes of Rosberg, Alonso, Button. Like, everyone seems to think he just has submissive teammates, and the likes of Bottas and Kovalainen. But when you look back at Michael Schumacher's list of teammates, he had way more submissive teammates in a way. Like Barrichello was told to never challenge him. Then he had, sorry?
Johnny Herbert at Benetton.
Yeah, and JJ Leto, Jos Verstappen. He had an agent, Nelson Piquet, who at that point was never going to really challenge. They weren't in a position to challenge championships when they're at Benetton. So it's just like you can really pick your arguments, but in the end, what's the point in arguing? Because we are in an era of real greatness. He may be a polarizing figure, he may be a Marmite person, but in the end, we just have to just accept the fact that even if races are boring with him at the front, it's not his fault. I mean, yes, he did once say that Vettel dominating F1 might be bad, damaging for it, but then he ends up being the one dominating. In the end, you have to. It's not like Hamilton's going to be like, right, everyone go through. I'm clearly better than everyone, so I'll go against my own. I'll go for my own words and all that. So yeah, Hamilton potentially going to end up being the most successful driver of all time in terms of wins, poles, and championships. And every driver of every era that has done great, even the ones I've not been a fan of, I have to tip my hat off to them and admit that they were great. So, what's next? Driver of the day. Now, Ashley, who was in our Austrian Grand Prix debrief, suggested this after we had recorded, and then I was a plum and forgot to bring it up for the Styrian race. So, who do we rank for driver of the day and why? So, Aaron, I'm going to let you go first.
I think there's a few good candidates. I'm not going to do what they do on the F1 games and just give it to the one who gained the most positions.
That's infuriating.
I think the two candidates that jump out to me straight away are Max Verstappen for doing what he binned it and then recovered, and obviously Lewis Hamilton for just flying away at the start and maintaining that he didn't, lose any speed or anything. He just drove away into the sunset effectively and took a dominant win and showed what he can do. So I think they're the two that jump out to me straight away.
Rob?
I think I'd have to say Lewis. I guess it's a boring, answer to go for the winner of the race, but for someone to get such a good start in the wet and then pull away in the wet, just almost like an Ayrton Senna, just knowing where the grip was and just dominating like that, and the gap that he pulled, to Verstappen behind him. Obviously, we know that Verstappen's no slouch. He's a very quick driver himself, and the way that Hamilton just controlled the race and just, it was almost like he was stroking the car home, but he was still building this immense gap. It was a faultless race. He was just imperious out front, and it's just one of those dominant drives that is befitting of of a world champion and probably soon to be the most successful driver in the history of F1. He really just dominated and just led the race beautifully out front. So yeah, I find it difficult to look past that performance, and I would give driver of the day to him personally.
As for me, Aaron literally just said, "Oh, they give it to the one who ends up getting the most positions." I kind of have to give it to Albon. He was in a very difficult position at the start of the race, and he really, like as I said earlier, silenced a lot of the doubters, and I'm very happy for him. Since we didn't do it for the first two, do we want to potentially try to pull something out of the hat for the Austrian and Styrian Grand Prix? Who wants to take that?
Well, I feel like Austria, well, for me, it's kind of easy. That would be Lando Norris for his laps towards the end, and obviously first podium for McLaren. So, I'd easily go for Lando in Austria. In Styria, I've got such a bad memory that I don't really remember everything that happened in that race. So I couldn't tell you, but for sure it would be Lando in Austria for me.
Aaron?
Yeah, 100% agree. What Lando did in Austria was ace. Pulling fastest lap off and toppling Hamilton. That's no mean feat for someone, especially someone like Lando, to do. Second season, first race, great effort. Like Rob, I've slept since Styria, so I don't really remember much of it. I don't know, to be honest, off the top of my head. I probably couldn't tell you.
You two, right? Okay. I'll agree on that. Lando Norris for the Austrian Grand Prix. I think it's very difficult not to. I did vote for Perez before he clattered into Albon and almost did a Hamilton, putting him out at turn 4 in the pink Mercedes, not the black Mercedes. But since that happened, I'm biased, aren't I? It's going to have to be Lando again. I just how he made up those positions, like scenario 7, last lap Lando. You can't get any better than that. So yeah, I'm going for him. All right, before we end off today, I just mentioned at the start that Rob has been promoted to Deputy F1 Editor. That is because our former Deputy F1 Editor, Jenny, has moved up to be Deputy Editor alongside our very own James. So just want to take a moment to congratulate Jenny. I think we all marvel in the work that everyone puts in on the Pit Crew website. I've my first article, the one about Igor Fraga. It was edited by Jenny, but before I knew that you had to have a 900-word limit. So Jenny, I apologise that you had to drudge through all that for me, but I appreciate it. And we're in a great little community, aren't we? What would you guys say to that?
Yeah, I'd agree. I mean, I've been here 5 years now, so I'm one of the old timers. I've seen it all. We have got a good community. And it's not just F1. We've got people like Warren who specialise in WRC. We've got people who have their own little areas of expertise and really bring that to the table. We all love F1, I think, but I think the people with the niches do help us in an extent. We have a great little community of people who, I think it's a good place to be.
Before I throw it over to Rob, I have been meaning to, because I've been a bit worried that because we focus mainly on F1 on the Pitcast, if we're sort of neglecting those little groups, so whether it be like the junior Formula people, the rallyists, or the motorcycle, like MotoGP was just last weekend. And my boy, Fabio Quartararo, got that first win, and I'm happy about that. So, Aaron, being the sole editor so far, you're going to be editing this episode. Hello, Aaron in edit. How are you? You all right? Little Easter egg for later. I'm a bit worried that if we were to start trying to diversify the content we put out on here, you're going to be overworked to hell and back, aren't you?
Well, that's it comes with the territory, doesn't it? I mean, I don't really mind. It's quite easy editing. You just got to, because thankfully we all do quite well, and we don't start swearing everywhere. We don't start pausing and doing all kinds. Don't you dare!
I nearly.
Yeah, it's not that hard to an extent. Branching out, I'd love to do it. I mean, I'm the BTCC editor, so once touring cars gets going again, I'd love to start doing podcasts about touring cars. What the only worry I have is it possibly oversaturates, maybe. I don't know. I mean, I could be wrong. But, you know, I mean, Rob, I don't know what you think. I mean, what do you think on it?
It'd be great. Obviously, as Luca said, it'd be a lot more work for you. I think we had a toilet break for James the other week, so you had to edit that out.
No. Hey, he didn't edit that out at all. James just discreetly told us on phone. Now you've just revealed to the whole world that James took whatever it was.
I do apologise. No, we had a great discussion actually during that, but yeah, we can edit that out. That's fine. Sorry, Aaron. But no.
No, let's leave it in. Just for the S's and gigs.
Sorry, James, I just exposed you. It would be great to kind of go into other series and other motorsports and do podcasts on that. It also, I think, opens up the opportunity for a lot more people who, in the crew, like Warren, for example, doesn't really watch Formula One anymore. So for sure, it'd give the opportunity to people like him and just generally for our viewers and listeners as well, who, obviously not all of our viewers, not all of our readers, our listeners of the podcast will really watch Formula One. So, it'd be good to kind of branch out and give content for everybody. So, let's hope we get the chance to do that as well. But just congrats to Jenny. Deserves the role. I'm going to be taking over from her, so hopefully I can do as good a job as she did. And she, as I say, definitely deserves that role. And we're all a tight knit group, so. It's definitely good to see everybody getting some success.
Yeah, I just want to take a moment out there because the Pit Crew Online is an open community. We will accept everyone who feels like they can potentially contribute in some way. So if you are listening to this and you are a motorsport fan and feel like you can write and you're looking for a career in either journalism or public relations in motorsport in any way, do feel free to get in touch with us on Twitter. This is a bad time to remember the Twitter handle. Is it just pitcrew_online? Am I right?
Yeah,
I think so. Yeah. I think it is.
Okay. Right, we'll go with that. If it's not, it's in the description as well as all our other social media. So if you don't have Twitter, you can get us on Facebook or Instagram. And our main leader, F1 Taxi, the crew chief, as I like to call him, Simon, or Dexter Fletcher lookalike. I don't know if you two have heard that one before, but I've called him Dexter Fletcher because he resembles Dexter Fletcher. Folks, he's not going to hear the end of that now. Everyone who feels like they can contribute, please don't hesitate to come to us. You are welcome. You could potentially be involved on the Pitcast if you have Zoom, that is, because that's the software we use. So on that very positive note, and again, a huge congratulations again to Jenny and also to Rob for his promotion. We are going to end the episode. So, sorry to again do this. Who here wants to reveal their social media handle so they can be stalked?
So it's at Kershaw16Rob on Twitter.
Aaron?
Yes, so it's at Aaron Erwin7. I mean, there's nothing really that interesting on there, to be honest. It's but feel free to give it a follow if you want.
Yeah, well, good job selling it. And my username on Twitter is the Luca format. So thank you again. We will be back again for another debrief and a few more podcast episodes in between. I think Simon said he wanted to do some kind of like Silverstone memories. So until the British Grand Prix on August 2nd, we will see you all out on track.